University in 1931. He has been highly active in the field of physical education since that time. Some of that activity we're going to talk about and have him give us some recollections of those events through his lifetime. His work has been very diverse, including a long tenure at Vaux Junior High School from 1943 to 1976, which was the occasion of his retirement, although the term doesn't seem too apropos. He's been as active in his so-called retirement years as he was as a physical educator during that time. His involvements have reached several levels of the community, including his work with the Hebrew Education Society, with Twin Spring Farm Day Camp, his very active role as an official in the city of Philadelphia and in various professional associations. We're very fortunate that Nate has graciously invited us into his home to share some of the times that he has and some of the mementos that reflect his very active life work in the field of physical education. Thank you for having us here.
Pleasure to have you.
I'd like to begin tonight, Nate, by starting at your professional beginning, so to speak, with your time of graduation, 1931, from Temple University. You've held a very close association, and in fact are still an active alumni and active on the staff within the Hyper D department. I'd like to begin by asking you, it was 1931, had some element of economic hard time to it.
Yes, we hit the Depression then.
How did that affect your professional role?
Well, during the Depression, everybody felt the Depression, and as a result, they were not doing any appointing in the school system.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until 1943 that I received an appointment. I did do a lot of substitute work prior to my appointment. I taught day here, day there. I had a couple long runs in different high schools. Mascom, I was there for a whole year. Roxborough, I was there for 6 months. And now in addition to my substitute work, I also, in 1929, I became involved in volunteer work at the Hebrew Education Society. And from 1929 until 1959, I remained associated with them. At first, I was a volunteer worker. Then I ran their physical education program. Then I became assistant director. And then in 1947, they asked me if I would start a day camp at the Hebrew Education Society and would run it for a half a day for 8 weeks during the summer. And if it were successful, then they would open it up on a full-time basis the following summer. Well, we had a successful half-day summer, and interesting, we charged 50 cents for each child for 8 weeks. The following year, we opened up full-time, and we charged $1 at that time. Now, the community center was a 4-story building, but no ground at all. Mm. So the half-day program we ran at the center, but then we took the children on trips. We took them out to Fairmount Park. I had several friends that were teaching Board of Education playgrounds, teaching in Board of Education playgrounds, and I would send them with leaders to different playgrounds, and they would have activities there. Mm-hmm. The following year, when we opened full-time, I chartered a bus to pick us up every day. I arranged with Fairmount Park for a section out there that we could use. So we'd have about a half-hour assembly program in the center. Then I would take them to Broad and Columbia. There was a swimming pool right on the corner, next to the corner, and they swam for an hour. And that was a very good program. The man they had there as lifeguard and water safety man, he was very good, and a lot of our boys and girls learned to swim there. From there, we would go out to Fairmount Park, where we had a section allotted to us, and they'd play games. We'd have arts and crafts, all the activities that you have in a camp. My head counselor and myself carried all the materials we needed in the trunks of our cars.
Mm-hmm.
So we ran a pretty successful program, and we ran that now until 1959, when the board of directors decided to close the community center, and the money that the organization has was transferred to another organization. We were an affiliate of the Federation of Jewish Agencies, and they had several agencies, so the money was given to one of the other agencies. And very sad day, the last day we had there. I have movies of it myself. Children coming out of the building the last day, all crying.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very good experience.
That was in a fairly tough, economically depressed neighborhood, was it not?
Not in the beginning. Later on it became that. At the beginning there were a lot of businesses down there, and then a lot of the people moved out of the community up to the northeast. But they would come back each summer, and the parents would drive their kids to the center so that they could participate in the day camp program.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really a good program, and it served a good purpose. When we closed, then I went from there. Incidentally, working there gave me good experience working with children, because from 1929 to 59, I was involved with children that went to our schools. And after that, when I had my appointment, can you cut that off? I get the phone for me, because when I went into the school system, and I went in at Vaux, when I went there at 43, Vaux was considered probably one of, if not the toughest school in the city. And the fact that I'd worked with boys the age of junior high and so forth was a very valuable experience for me. It meant that, it resulted rather, never having any problems at Vaux. I was able to handle all the situations there. Now, incidentally, with the community center, I used to give jobs, a lot of jobs, to people that were going to Temple. Buddy Friedman is one who's now a supervisor. Any number of them. And they'd work for me, run the gym in the evening. In fact, Buddy Friedman's wife worked for me as a volunteer worker. But these people were able to make some money. Marvin Black was another one. He owns Blue Pine Forest Overnight Camp. He got his first job with me, and it was a good experience for him. So I used to take care of a lot of the young men down there.
Right.
Now from there, when the community center closed in '59, then I went up and became affiliated with Twin Spring Farm Day Camp, and we'll probably discuss that a little more later.
Okay.
So I spent 30 years down there, and 30 years later I'm still at day camp here. But then during that time too, during the Depression, the government did a lot, gave out jobs that, well, not welfare, but what did they call that darn?
WPA.
What?
The WPA?
WPA, work,
Work Program Assistance? Or...
something like that. And I got a job working with in the playgrounds, the city playgrounds. I worked.
I was thinking you did have some time where you were in,
Yes,
in recreation.
I worked in recreation. Worked at out on Wayne Avenue at what's the name of that one? I forget that one. I worked at East Germantown's Recreation Center, and that was a big help. I also, my dad originally was a shoemaker, and but then he went into the shoe business. So I used to help him out in the shoe store.
Mm-hmm.
In a shoe repair shop, he had a big place downtown, 3rd and Market, and down there I clerked for him.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to work there, and then also continuing substitute work.
Mm-hmm.
When I had to go to substitute work, then he took care of the whole place.
Mm-hmm.
But when I wasn't subbing, I would help him out down there, take the work in, give it out, and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Can you give us an idea of what was, kind of create a picture of Vaux Junior High School, the first few years you taught there, what kind of
Vaux
system?
Junior High, I also worked for the Department of Public Assistance as a visitor for 3 years, 8 months prior to my appointment.
Uh-huh.
And it was interesting, the territory that I had to cover was Vaux area. And that proved very valuable to me because it gave me an insight as to the people.
Right.
And what their conditions was there. Also, during that time, I was a visitor, and I would go out and visit people who applied for relief. And then I would certify them if, in my opinion, I thought they were entitled to it. First, they came into the Department of Public Assistance office, where was 11th and Lehigh, and they would apply there. Then I would go out on the case. It was part of my caseload, that territory in there. In one block, I had must have had about 75 cases of aid to dependent children.
Mm-hmm.
That was young girls, teenagers that had babies,
Mm-hmm.
and interview them, and then continue interviewing to see if they continue to be eligible, check out where the father was if I could, so forth. And as I said before, it gave me an insight and a better understanding, and I think it helped me in my teaching because I better understood the children.
I'm sure it did.
When a child came into school at Vaux without a gym suit,
Mm-hmm.
couldn't afford it, I could readily understand why not. Or I had a shower program at Vaux, and I insisted every child take a shower. Every boy had to take a shower. And a lot of times, they lived in houses, 3-story houses with 1 bathroom and maybe 6 families.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't get that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'll tell you more about the showers. That was a lot of fun.
Well, let's talk about the scene at Vaux.
When I came to Vaux in '43, it was a tough neighborhood, very tough neighborhood. They had gang problems there. Each gang had his or her own territory.
Mm-hmm.
And kids from another territory was afraid to walk into those territories because of what might happen. But when I came, I had 2 good, strong teachers there, a John Powell and a Walt Nacconi, and very capable men in physical education. So I was in good hands. And of course, my experience at the community center handling children, and I used to, and I continued that after I worked at teaching at Vaux, because I was able to go right down street, right into 7th Street where the center was.
Mm-hmm.
And But after the first 2 years or 3 years, the two men that were there transferred out, and then I became department chairman there. We had a staff of 8 people, 4 men, 4 women.
And the physical education classes were absolutely segregated, were they not? At that time only?
Only boys, only girls.
Right.
It wasn't until the year I retired, after I retired, that they separated the boys and girls.
Mm-hmm.
So we had the boys. Our classes used to run anywhere from 50 to 100 kids,
Mm-hmm.
and there were just 2 teachers.
And how often a week did those
They
classes
went once a week, but a double period,
Mm-hmm.
which I thought was very good because you could really accomplish something. Because a single period, you 8 minutes, 9 minutes to come, and 9 minutes to get dressed and showered, and
Mm-hmm.
you have so little time to carry on a program.
So one class period was an hour in length?
One class period was 90 minutes, an hour and a half.
Uh-huh.
And I set up when the other men left and I became chairman, then I set up all our classes were set up and organized the same way. They had 90 minutes. I broke it up. We started with, they'd come up. We'd give them about 8 or 9 minutes to get to the gym. We had a 5-story building.
Mm-hmm.
So kids had to travel 5 floors sometime, 3 floors, or the other corner of the building. So the way I determined time, I had a gimmick. I used to do it, and I did the same thing in health. I sent a boy to walk, and I arranged with another teacher up on the far corner of the 4th floor. He was to walk up to his room and say, "Mr. Garfinkel sent me." And he'd send back the message, "Well, tell Mr. Garfinkel I'll take care of it."
Mm-hmm.
And I would time him. And when he'd get back, then I'd tell the class, now he walked. I told him when he left not to run.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't to loiter, but he was to go and come right back. And it took about 4 minutes, 4.5 minutes. I said, all right, gives you 4 minutes to get from the furthest corner
Mm-hmm.
to our gym. I'll give you 8, maybe 9 sometime, minutes to get down, get dressed, and come up from the basement. So that's how I set my time for that. And it worked well. We very rarely had children coming in late.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they didn't want to because they knew I didn't like it.
Right. What kind of system did you have with that amount of students to?
Well, all my classes I set up in squads.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the first 2 weeks, and I think I can honestly say I don't remember having a bad day at Vaux in terms of discipline.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that what we did, the way we did it, attributed to that. The first 2 weeks was purely orientation and organization, showing them what we wanted to do. They came into the gym. I explained our spot system. You're familiar with spot system, A1, A2, A3, B1, A2,
Each
so
student
on.
had a spot to go
Each
to?
child had a spot to go to the floor, so we gave him his spot
Mm-hmm.
on the floor. Then I brought them all together, sit in front of me on a table. I sat on the table, and I talked to them. I told them what we wanted, what we expected, and they cooperated well.
Mm-hmm.
And they would have to get down into the locker room, which was in the basement, change, and come up and be on the floor in 8 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Then we would start our program. The program was to consist of, I'd give about 15 minutes of warm-up calisthenics. We didn't call them warm-up in those days, call them calisthenics, exercise. After that, they were broken up into squads, and we had 8 squads. We put them in their squads, and we then had the squads elect captains.
Mm-hmm.
So there'd be a row, a row, and the squad leader would sit out in front facing his squad. And they voted for a captain. Then we would have apparatus. We'd have squad work in track and field. We'd have squad work in sports. We had squad work in basketball fundamentals and basketball. And what they would do, there were 8 spots on the floor. We had a nice sized gym. And they would work. When they finished with calisthenics, they'd go to their squads. Then I would march them to their squad assignment for that day. For example, in apparatus, I can picture it. We had two squads on a horse right in front of my office door. We had 2 squads of mats, the corner over there. We had 2 squads on rings and 2 squads on ropes. And we had set exercises. All the exercises were printed on the charts, and the squad leader carried that with him. Now what we did the first week, we demonstrated all the aims to the different groups. One teacher would take care of one half of the floor, which would be 4 squads, and the other teacher, we had 2 teachers, a lead teacher and the second teacher. We never called that person an assistant teacher. He was a teacher the same as the lead. The lead teacher was responsible for the role and setting up the class and everything. And we'd each take half the floor. And we'd demonstrate the exercises for the boys on the various pieces of apparatus. And then we'd give them, maybe 8 minutes or something like that, 9 minutes. And as soon as they finished that, we'd rotate. Mats would come to the horse would go to the ropes would go to the rings would go to the mats.
So the squads just went through the circuit
That's
within
right.
the class period.
That's right. Now, that was in apparatus. Then we had squad work in, let's say, basketball fundamentals we had. We had 2 squads down at one basket where they were shooting around the world. You know that game? All right. The squad up at the other corner, the 2 squads up there, they had foul shooting. Or no, we had 1 squad down there. That's right, 1 squad doing around the world. Then about halfway up the floor, I had cones across the floor. And the boys had to dribble in and out the cones and back. Then at the next basket, for example, we had foul shooting. And they shot 10 altogether, but 5 at a time. And the boys would take their turns. It was interesting there, and you always get information I had a student teacher at that time. We had a problem with the leader remembering how many shots he made and so forth. So the teacher made a good suggestion. He said they got 10 shots altogether. He said right along the line, put numbers down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And the squad leader gives the boy the ball, stands on 1. Shoots it, he moves to 2, moves to 3. Never any argument. We never had, the kids, they used to argue on that one piece about I didn't get enough. Never any arguments after that. So you pick something up like that information, and we used it all the time. Then I had jump and reach to develop rebounding. Then I had, let me see if I can remember, the basket under the clock, what they do there. Dribble in, layup. And they had a minute to do that. See, they were in front of the clock so he could watch the clock for the minute. And he would dribble in and do his minute. He could dribble in, lay up, come back, dribble in, lay up, come back, and so forth. Then we had the next basket. We had another squad do, they shot from a perimeter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shots. Then they went down to the next basket. Down there they had shooting from the side only. Then to the next basket they had, dribble in layups and how many layups he could do within a minute. And that took us around the floor. So, and they would rotate after these things.
Right.
And everybody got chances. There wasn't too much sitting around. And that's it. So, and other things we had there, apparatus, basketball fundamentals, track and field. We had fundamentals in track and field the same way with 8 squads. And
how long did each unit about last? About how many units did you run during a curriculum
period?
year?
Either 2 or 3.
2 or 3 weeks.
It would take 4 weeks, I think, to make the complete rotation. 4 weeks. And the first, with track and field, they practiced a few minutes and then they went into that and they could be graded. Apparatus, they practiced the first week. Next week they came back, went to apparatus again, and then they went through the X and got marked. And it took, for marking, the teachers did the marking in apparatus. Where it was, where you had to count, we could let the squad leaders do it.
Right.
But where judgment was involved, then the 2 teachers did it. So I would mark, let's say, the horse here while the mats practiced. Then I'd go over to the mats, mark them while the other practiced.
What kind of grading criteria did you use?
We said they had, what do you call it? What's the word for it? Scale, not scales. Standards. So many fouls out of 10, if the case may be.
And were those established
They were
across
established.
the city?
Yes, they were established. And some things I did later on we didn't do. I had an activity where you stepped up and stepped down, step up, step down. It was a good activity, good physical. So what I did, I tested everybody. And then we averaged it out and arrived at standards
To
that
get
way.
the standard.
Yes.
Maybe we
Physical fitness, that was another, we had to do that. We had to do it in October, I think it was. I sent the results downtown. Then we did it again in May, I think, April or May, and sent those. And they were able to send back results, was there improvement and so forth.
And I believe you had mentioned that this was standard procedure all over the city as well. And in essence,
No, not necessarily.
it was not?
No. A lot of the schools, they didn't do squad work. This I know from my when I was subbing, traveling around from school to school. No, they didn't have a standard. The city didn't set up a standard way for all classes.
Oh, I see. Maybe we should clarify at Vaux Junior High exactly what grades that involves, since junior high is
Vaux
kind
is,
of a
was
different
7th,
term.
8th, 9th grades, 3 years. And we fed the high schools in the area. Boys and girls, low economic area, as I said before.
You had related before to me an incident with a young man who habitually came in unprepared for your class.
Yeah, well, that's a good illustration of meeting a person, what I call meeting him halfway. They all had to come up out of the basement, and the lead teacher used to stand right at the top and catch them as they come up. If he's unprepared, you get a... Now, we never excused any child from gym unless he brought a note from the nurse. If he came in and said, I got a sore arm, I'd say, all right, take gym, don't use that arm. My back hurts, take gym, but don't hurt the back. And 9 times out of 10, 10 minutes later, you'd see the kid doing everything. So we did away with a lot of excuses. We didn't excuse anybody from gym. They all took gym. If they didn't have their gym suit, shoes and socks came off, shirt came off. And the kids got to know that, and there was no fussing about it. This one time, this boy came up unprepared, and it was the second time, and we marked, every child was marked with a U, unprepared, half unprepared. That meant the kid took gym, put a line through the U to indicate that. Came up the second time. I said, look, this is the second time you're unprepared. What's the story? Shoulder he nodded or lifted and so forth. And I said, look, I might have to I might have to send you to the office. He says, all right, I'll go to the office. Well, I don't have him now. He's not afraid of that. So, yeah, but might have to call Mother. Well, you can call her. I said, yeah, but then again, I might have to keep you after school. Oh, Mr. Garfinkel, he said, please don't keep me. I'm working. If I come late, he'll fire me. And I need the money. I says, look, you want me to meet you halfway? Then you've got to meet me halfway. In fact, I'll go a little more. He says, oh, I'll never be unprepared again, but I don't have a suit. I'll lend you a suit. I had a whole locker full of gym suits I used to collect, and gave him the suit. And true to that boy's word, he never was unprepared again. And but one thing I never did was, I never threatened or threatened or tell the kid I would do something unless I was sure I could do it. And I always would feel them out to find. And it was the case here. And it worked. This boy never was unprepared again.
How was the attendance?
Attendance in my classes were good. I didn't have, very rarely did I have cutting. Very rarely. The boys knew I checked it. And they knew that they'd be caught. A lot of times they may go in, with all due respect to other classes, sometimes the teacher doesn't take a roll or something like that. They get away with it. But we checked, and we always followed through.
Would you say there was a different handling of truancy in terms of the schools such as Vaux when you started, and maybe some of the schools you see today? Is the effort the same in terms of tracking down youngsters that don't make it to school very often?
Well, I think all the schools have what they used to call truant officers. And they would go out, I believe, and investigate if it was a chronic affair. If he was absent once, maybe twice, they wouldn't. But I think so, that we had people, home and school visitors, that went out to check. But a lot of times kids cut right within the school.
Right.
Look, went to the bathroom, or hide here, hide there. And I didn't have much of that, very little. And the kids knew that I followed through. And
I get the picture from having a few conversations with you that you would probably be viewed by the youngsters today as a very strict disciplinarian, that you had a system.
I don't like the term disciplinarian.
What term would you use? What?
Understanding, maybe.
Okay.
I didn't think of it in terms of discipline. I didn't run into that much.
Well,
It got so, of course, the longer I was there, the easier it was too, because the kids, after a while, I began teaching children whose mothers and fathers I taught. And child would come into school, my mother says hello, my father says hello. Or they'd come in the office, father played basketball for me. My father wants to know if his picture's still up on the wall. May I look? Sure, go ahead, and the kids get all excited with something like that. Also, they were told, the children were, you behave in Mr. Garfinkel's class. Also, if you have a problem, you can go to Mr. Garfinkel and he'll do everything he can to help you. So, and the parents used to come back to visit. Occasionally they'd stop in the gym and say hello.
So you really developed a rapport that stretched over the generations and over the time.
Yes, I did. Going back to the gym and the organization and setting it up, we were discussing before, I went through all the procedures and I introduced the most important thing to the children. That was my whistle.
Mm-hmm.
When the whistle blew, every child had to sit down on the floor with his hands around his knees facing the teacher. And we used to practice it at the beginning. Well, I'd get up and walk around, blow the whistle, down they go, hands around the knees. And the word got out around the city that at Vaux, when the whistle blew, everything stopped. Well, we once had a man come down, a guy named Bob Logan. I think he taught at Fitzsimons. He came in to observe, and he said, "What's this I hear about when the whistle blows in the school, everything stops?" I said, "Yeah, that's true." He said, "Let me see it." So I wasn't the lead teacher in that class, but I told the other teacher, I said, "Bob, show him." So he let the kids play with a basketball, and they were shooting it around, and he blew the whistle. And down every kid went, hands around the knees. And just as he blew the whistle, one kid shot a basketball. Well, as luck would have it, I guess, the basketball wasn't blown up solid, and it lodged in the supports of the basket and stayed there. He says, "Now I know why you say everything stops."
Even the basketball obeyed the whistle.
Everything stops. I used to blow the whistle. I always taught from on top of a table, never from the floor, so I could look down and see everybody, because I was short.
Mm-hmm.
And so every now and then I'd blow the whistle, take out a stopwatch, and time them. You did it in this such and such a time. And I'd do it for a while, then another time I'd blow the whistle. I'd look at that watch and look at the class. Look at the watch, look at the class, and the kids wondering what's going on. "I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Do you know you boys broke the record?" And they go, "Oh." Little gimmicks like that, I think, helped, and the kids get all excited with it. They'd come in another time. "Can we try to break the record again?" and something
Sure.
like that. After every class, every boy had to go down to take a shower.
Mm-hmm.
And we gave towels. And they took the towel with them. And then we collected. They weren't allowed out of the shower room itself to go to their lockers with the towel. They had to dry themselves in there. And a boy checked. We had a boy at the door collect the towels, because they counted towels when they brought them into us, and we had to account for all the towels we had. And we used to use, on the boys' side, about 700, 800, 900, depending on the size. Mm-hmm. And we used to get practically 100% showers.
Mm-hmm.
One time, I came up with an idea. It just comes to mind. The kids never brought soap. And I didn't have any soap at that time. So I got a big can, one of those spray cans, the Flit, they used to call it, I think, that sprayed for bugs.
Mm-hmm.
And I filled it with liquid soap. The kids came in, they went through the shower, get wet, came out, and I go, shh, shh, shoot the soap on him. He'd rub himself down and then take a shower, come out dry.
You probably should have patented that system.
Oh, that was funny that time. I didn't do it too long, a couple of weeks, but then we were able to buy soap. We were able to get little cakes.
Mm-hmm.
So we used to give them soap too, because to me showers was very important, a lot of these kids. Frequently, teachers would send kids down to me. They'd come in with a noter,
Mm-hmm.
and they'd send them down to me. Will you let him take a shower?
Mm-hmm.
And we'd let him shower down there. That is, he'd wait for the class to go down,
Right.
and he'd shower.
Tell us a little bit about your coaching experiences during the
Coaching?
Volks years.
I coached basketball and softball. One year I coached for a couple months track. The coach was sick. But now basketball, we always had very good teams.
Mm-hmm.
That area, the neighborhood there, they were not too far from a playground where they could play a lot. So I used to get very good material, and I don't think I ever had a losing season.
Mm-hmm.
We give them uniforms, so forth. They practice after school. We were paid for it, for coaching, not much,
Mm-hmm.
a couple of dollars. But we had good teams. One time, one season, I had a bunch of small kids, under 5 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very proud of this one. And when time for the selection of the team came, my big team was all practically back from the year before. And the little kids were good, but I had to make a choice. And they were so disappointed, so heartbroken, I'm telling you. And it bothered me. And when I went home that night, it bothered me. And I thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to call the other junior high schools and ask them if they can get teams made up of boys under 5 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
So I called all the junior highs, and I was able to get 10 schools. I says, all right, we'll have a meeting in my gym. I was chairman of basketball, incidentally, for the junior high schools in Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a meeting with these 10 coaches, and we set up a schedule. But when I called the boys in that day after I'd made all the phone calls, I said, I got some good news for you. I says, we're going to have an under 5, and I explained what it was. Anybody under 5 feet will be able to play. We'll have a team. I don't know what I'll do about uniforms for you.
Mm-hmm.
But I have 10 other schools, and you never saw a kid so excited.
Mm.
I spoke to a mother a couple of days later. She says, you have no idea what it did for him.
Mm.
Anyway, so we got started with that. And no uniforms. Well, the team, my big team, had gotten new uniforms that year. So I had given it to them. But my policy was after a game, they had to wash it and bring it in the next day.
Mm-hmm.
So they brought them in. They all come in complaining. What's the matter? The suits shrunk. They don't fit. Great. I gave those to the under
you knew
5.
just who they were sized for.
Yeah,
Huh?
I gave them to the under 5, and I gave the big team their old uniforms.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the under 5 became so popular. It continued for a number of years until I retired. Then I understand it. They didn't do it anymore. But it became so popular. We had an elementary school right up the street, and we would walking to school. The kids, when I come to school, I'd bump into them. They would, Mr. Garfinkel, I'm coming next year to your school. I want to play under 5 basketball.
Mm-hmm.
So it became very popular, and they got everything that the big team got. They got a varsity V.
Mm-hmm.
They were invited to the banquet, and they got all the credit, recognition in the assembly, everything that the big team did. So I used to coach both, morning and afternoon.
Mm.
Then I did that in the morning. I had to come in early to do the teaching.
Before
Or
school
coaching
started.
before school, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then the afternoon we had the older the bigger boys. But what happened in a lot of cases, you go to a school and I stand there and talk to a kid. Coach send him over. I'm over 5 feet, but can I play? The coach wants to know if I may play. What am I going to say? No to the kid?
Mm-hmm.
We ran into a lot of that. We went to one school, and the kids looked tall to me because when I spoke to them, like eye to eye, I'm 5'4".
Mm-hmm.
So they must have been over 5'1", 5'2". So I said to the coach, "Look, these kids are all big." He said, "No, there's the line on the wall over there. They all fit." So I said, let's measure them. All right, so I took them all, and they all fit under that line. I said, "Get me a ruler." He got me a ruler. I measured 5 feet 2. So the tricks
Just
like
a
that
little
they
edge,
did,
yeah.
and it's a shame that it was a very good activity. The kids
Mhm.
really loved it.
You had another program that it just came to mind while you were talking about the under 5 league, and that had to do with the faculty pairing up
Oh, I used
for
to
the
run.
annual
I
event.
used to run tournaments. Later on, I gave up coaching,
Mhm.
gave it to somebody else. I continued with the under 5, and then I ran the extracurricular activities program
Mhm.
after school. And as part of that, I used to run all kinds of tournaments. The first part of the term, I ran volleyball. And the first 2 weeks of school, after they were orientated, they were given fundamentals of volleyball, and then they had a tournament within the gym class.
Mhm.
And then I would take the winners of each gym class after school and have an elimination tournament during my extracurricular program. So we'd come up with a volleyball tournament. Then I had tournaments. I had foul shooting tournament. I had, we used to play 21. You know how to play that?
Mhm.
21. And come up with an idea, teacher pupil. And the teachers would get a pupil, or a pupil would get a teacher and be the partner, and they'd play 21 and best out of 3, elimination, and get the winners. Well, that became so popular that when September rolled, we didn't have that tournament until May.
Mhm.
But when the New Year started, in May, the teachers used to come in and ask who are some good basketball players.
Mhm.
And the kids would go around asking teachers to be their partners. And it didn't have to be just a male, it was male or female, made no difference.
Mhm.
But teacher pupil, and it was very popular with the kids. Then I ran basketball tournaments. Tug of war I used to run. I did that for the 7th graders. Tug of war. I picked out the winners of each gym class, then took them after school and ran it down to 2 teams, took those into the assembly, and on the stage in front of the whole school, they'd have the tug of war.
Uh-huh.
And it used to be popular. Oh, they used to scream in there with that one. And I ran a 3-on-3 tournament, a 2-on-2. I ran a boy-girl against boy-girl.
Mhm.
So I used to run a lot of different tournaments, and the kids liked it.
I understand you're pretty fair foul shooter yourself in basketball, and I've heard some stories that some people who were kept after class for detention purposes to help you out. Is there any truth to that?
It happened once. Teacher sent a kid down. Couldn't stay to keep him after school.
Uh-huh.
So he came in with his buddy. The teacher brought him down to me and had a friend with him. He said, asked me if I'd keep him, because I was there after school anyway. It was a matter of putting him up on the windowsill. I said, all right, I'll keep him. So I said, I'll tell you what I'll do to the kid. After a while, about 10 minutes, 15, Mr. Garfinkel, can I go? I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to shoot fouls. And when I miss, you can go home.
Mm-hmm.
And his friend said, I got to go. He says, wait, he won't shoot for long. So I started to shoot. Now the procedure was this, to make it longer. I would shoot the foul. He had to get the ball wherever it bounced and walk it to me, not throw it, walk it and hand it to me.
Mm-hmm.
So that would take time too. And then I would pose and do that too. So we started. I shot, made the first one. He got the ball, walked it back again. And I kept that up. I don't know, I must have made 35, 40 shots.
Mm-hmm.
And the other kid that's waiting for him said, I can't wait, I'm going home.
Mm.
So he went home, and the kid's standing there walking back. So I must have made about 35, 40 shots that day, straight, one right after another.
Yeah.
I was pretty fortunate. I was able to shoot a basketball. I used to have a lot of trick shots there. Hit the wall, go in the basket. One basket was near a door, and I was able to shoot the ball, hit the wall going up, hit the ceiling, come down and go in the basket. And in those days, too, we had long nets. So I was able to shoot and hit the bottom of the net. The net would grab the ball and swing it around and go in top. And I had another one walking to my office. I was about 10 feet out. I'd throw the ball underhanded, hit the wall, come back, and go in once in a while. And a lot of those trick shots. Now today down at Temple, at this time down at Temple, a lot of the security people, a lot of the maintenance people were people I taught at Vaux. There I'd bump into some, Mr. Garfinkel. Oh, Mr. Garfinkel, can you still shoot the ball off the wall? Oh, I used to have a lot of fun with that one.
Your attention turned from the coaching angle to the officiating angle.
Well, no,
Or were you
after
doing
I
both of those?
retired, I did the officiating
Yeah.
and track and field and cross country. I do. Basketball, I was a basketball official. I did high school ball, 1 or 2 college games. What did I do? In officiating basketball, I passed the test in 1938. In 1988, the IBO, Basketball Association, honored me and for 50 years of service with the order, although I wasn't officiating at the end. But I still I went to meetings and so
You're
forth.
still active in rules interpretations and
Well,
determinations and so forth?
I get the book each year, and I'm a member, so I look up the rules, but I don't do any officiating.
But you are still active in
Track and field and cross
official-
country. In fact, I had a cross country meet today, the girls' high schools. I start those.
Well, if I was to say, Gina, what do you have on schedule for next week? How do you keep track of all those things?
I go into my pocket because what I do tomorrow, I don't know what I did yesterday.
This is the
Oh,
infamous
Saturday,
Brown
by
book.
the way, I'm going to, where are we here? Oh, I'm going to Ambler campus, running a 5-mile run, and they're a fun run and walk for a mile. One at 9 a.m. and one at 10 a.m. I'm going to start those races for them. What am I doing next week? Let's see. Monday's no school. Tuesday, Founders Day, I'm on the Founders Day committee for the General Alumni. So I have a meeting there. B'nai B'rith Educator Lodge,
Mm-hmm.
a retirees luncheon at 12 o'clock. The Alumni Center meeting is at 5:30. At 7 p.m., the women are playing volleyball. At 7 o'clock, I have to be at Girls High School for ATTAC. ATTAC is the Athletic Congress. They're the
Mm-hmm.
controlling people in the... We're having a clinic there. We've had 2 meetings already. Wednesday, women's preview dinner at 6 o'clock. Well, I'm going to take Mike's class for him on Wednesday, too,
Mm-hmm.
at 10 o'clock, and teach them calisthenics. Not teach them calisthenics, teach them how to teach calisthenics.
Mm-hmm.
Wednesday, Thursday, I have cross-country championship at Belmont. I'm going to start that meet. Then I have a TAC meeting at Olney at night, 7 p.m. Friday, we have the area track meet, women's volleyball, Atlantic Championship, wherever that is. If it's near here, I'll go. Then next Saturday, women's field hockey NCAA championships. If it's at Rutgers, I'll go up probably,
Mm-hmm.
I think. No, I won't. Special Olympics. Yeah, I forgot about that. Special Olympics all day. They're having a conference all day on Special Olympics.
Mm-hmm. You've been pretty active in that.
Yes,
the last few
I
years.
start. I'm head starter, and I start. They have the big meets. I start all those. I start their district meets. I start the swimming meets that they have
Mm-hmm.
for them too. And I'm on their Special Olympics Advisory Board. Women's volleyball Atlantic Tennis Championship. I don't know where they're going to play that. Then women's field hockey. Hey, open house. I do a lot of volunteer work for Temple.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it, which is one of the reasons I received the Distinguished Service Award.
Mm-hmm.
They have open house.
And you
And
serve
I
as
can't
one
go to
of the-
that because my niece is being married.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to go to the wedding.
Mm-hmm.
So that's next week.
Can I see that for just a second, just to give an idea? This is the main way you keep track of your life, then, by
Without that, I wouldn't know where to go tomorrow.
you're really stuck, and every day is penciled in, and there are usually in each entry at least 3 or 4 places that there's either a meeting or an event or a social get-together or an association meeting. I know you're
Yeah.
quite active in the
Well, I'm active
Philadelphia.
with the Philadelphia Hyper D, Temple's Hyper D, basketball meetings, the other meetings. I don't know. But if I ever lost this,
You'd be cooked, huh?
no. See, I'm smart.
Oh, yeah?
On the refrigerator, on the door of my refrigerator,
Uh-huh.
I have the same calendar, but that doesn't go the whole time, but it takes in, the one I have there now covers about 4 or 5 months.
So you have a backup system.
So I put both, because if I lose this, oh,
Mm-hmm. I'd like for you to give us some information about how you originally got started in physical education. Were there some people that were significant to that?
well, when a youngster, 12, 13, 14 years old, for about 6 years of my life, I lived downtown, South Philadelphia. And where I lived was a playground known as Star Garden. And they had 3 instructors there, PE people. I guess they were PE people, I don't know, but they taught the physical education classes. Peter Schmidt, Sam Frank, and Bill Carrington. And I took classes with them. I worked with them. And they were very instrumental, I think, in my becoming a physical education teacher. I got to see what they did down there and how they did it, and
Mm-hmm.
how all the children took to them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the reasons. Also, when I went in high school at Central High, I had a Dr. O'Brien there who was head of the department. He was my basketball coach. And I spoke to him often about it. And he urged me to take physical education.
Mm-hmm.
So with those things in awe, I went to Temple and signed up for physical education.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sorry. I've enjoyed it all these years.
Is there any part of, when you look back over all the many things you've done, are there some people or any specific work you've done that you have maybe a little more fondness for, a little special, different feeling for?
Well, we had a man at Temple named Gus Heineman, an instructor.
Mm-hmm.
And in my opinion, he was the finest teacher I've ever known. He was outstanding. And at one time there, he was out sick for 2 weeks. 1 week, 2 weeks, I think it was. And I went up to the head of our department, Dr. Prosh, and asked him if I could teach Heineman's classes. I was a senior at the time.
Mm-hmm.
He said, sure, all right. So I taught a sophomore class, and my late wife was a member of that class. And she was worried that maybe things wouldn't go well. Oh, I gave them a drill in divided order. They started by lining up. Conwell Hall Gym is where we had our physical education work there. Started out breaking the class in two, and they came down either side of the gym, into the middle, 4 across. They come there, and they did an exercise. Take 4 steps forward, the same exercise, all the way up, and each 4 that came up followed through and did the same exercise. And went up to the end. It was a marching drill too. And then back down around the side and came up again. They got their second. I gave them 4 exercises. Maybe a deep knee bend, lower trunk lowering, higher. So they'd be different from each other. Mm-hmm. And then after they did that drill, I had them do it in divided order. The first one that came up did the first exercise. They took 4 steps forward and continued the first exercise, but the second line that came up did the second exercise all the way up. Mm-hmm. The third one came up, third exercise, and the fourth up, the fourth exercise. Went around again, did number 1, now does number 2, 2 did 3, mm-hmm. 3 did 4, 4 did 1. And they did that around. And it went, in my opinion, very well. And I don't know whether you're familiar with Conwell Hall. They have a balcony. Mm-hmm. Have you seen it? Well, once they got started, I ran out and went upstairs into the balcony so I could look down and view it. Mm-hmm. And it did look good. And they went through the whole drill. And when they finished, they all turned, looked up, and applauded. My wife later told her everybody was coming to her. She wasn't my wife then, but mm-hmm. We'd been going together for a while, and how well I did and so forth. So I took the rest of his classes. Then when he came back, he invited me in, and he would break the class up into different sections on the floor and an apparatus. And myself and there were a couple other seniors that would help him, mm-hmm. and we graded him on those things too. So I became attached to him. A wonderful person, wonderful person.
When you describe that teaching technique, I'm sure there are a lot of your students who are out there doing their practical teaching experience right now who would have difficulty identifying with that. That's pretty far out of
I think
there.
so. They don't do too much calisthenics anymore.
Mm-hmm.
They don't.
Would-
And but we had a whole lot of. We had a class of about 100 people.
Mm-hmm.
He used to give us these workouts. I mean, they were workouts. We had a piano teacher there that played the piano for the rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have to count. They did the counting themselves, and they.
How would you size the curriculums up that you utilized at Vox in the late 30s, 40s, and the curriculums you see in place today?
No, wait, Vaux would be 43 up.
43 and up, right. Do you, I know that would be a difficult comparison, but do you have any feeling one way or another about?
Oh, I liked it because it kept everybody busy.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't too much sitting around. And you had activity all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I won't mention where. I observed one place they had volleyball, I think it was. So a kid got one chance to serve a ball, or a couple chances, and that was his activity.
Hmm.
And other things the same way. Some places, I'm not going to name places. In fact, I don't want to criticize anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt that my squad work program took care of everybody. Everybody was active, and everybody got some physical education.
Mm-hmm. How would you you characterize if someone says, and I've read some of the letters of commendation that you've had, and they're quite often use the word success. What in your mind do you feel like you did for youngsters that made that a successful teaching experience? What would you say to perhaps a student, an undergraduate student for Temple who said, Uncle Nate, what really makes a successful teacher? What kind of characterization how would you describe someone who was successful in education?
Well, I'd say someone that could set up a program, someone that could get the children involved, and the children or the students or pupils want to do those things.
How was the teaching experience successful then for you? What things did you get back from your teaching experience that made you know it was
Well,
right?
I had a nice compliment paid when I was over at Vaux when I was cooperating teacher. Had a fellow over there named Davis, who later went into recreation with in Philadelphia, became a supervisor. And in talking to somebody, he said, he did a student teaching with me at Vaux, and he said, I got more at Vaux in my 8 weeks there than I did my 4 years at Temple.
Mm-hmm. That is a nice compliment.
Lou DeVicaris, who was principal at King, if I remember right, same thing.
Uh-huh.
So if they got something out of it, then I satisfied. They had a real teaching experience at Vaux. They got a regular roster for the students. They weren't student teachers.
Mm-hmm.
They were a teacher that was going to be with us for 8 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I never mentioned student teaching to the kids. He's a student teacher.
Mm-hmm.
They have a new teacher here. Whenever a student teacher came to me at Vaux, I found their strong point, emphasized that. For example, I had a fellow named Bill Bernardo. You may remember Bill from Northeast High. Did his student teaching at Vaux. He played football for Temple.
Mhm.
He's in Temple's Hall of Fame. And he had that season. They played, I think it was Boston or one of the colleges up north. And he ran back a kickoff for 92 yards. And they had a movie of it. So I arranged to get the movie. I brought it over to Vaux, and in the assembly, I had Mr. Bernardo up on the stage. Then we ran the movie. Oh, the kids loved it.
Yeah.
I had another fella, guy named Fairfax, just retired from Central High School. He came to me as a student teacher, and he was on the gym team at Temple. And in those days, they had flying rings.
Mhm.
And he was an expert on that. He went up there and did some tricks unbelievable, and had the kids eating out of his hand. Things like that. It helps them out, I think.
Would you like to guess a little bit about if you had a real strong influence on the direction of physical education in the 1990s, and you could make suggestion for what directions it might take that maybe we're not taking right now?
Well, I'd like to see physical education every day,
Mm-hmm.
one period a day. I think that's the most important thing. You do physical education 1 week and then nothing after that. Now, some of the kids may work out, but a lot of them will have that period of physical education, and that's all there is to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to see one period of physical education every day. But the trouble is now they're getting more and more content that they want to put into the program, but the day remains the same. So they have to cut something. So what happens? They hit physical education, they hit art, they hit home economics, or cooking, or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to see that come back.
You've had quite an extensive involvement as a volunteer in American Red Cross. I know you've done instructor work as well as volunteer work.
Yes, during the war, I taught first aid classes. One group I taught, Department of Public Assistance.
Mm-hmm.
I taught a class there. I taught a part, they had this WPA, carpenters and mechanics and so forth. I taught a class to them, and what a pleasure that one was, because I needed splints, and they brought me, and they made for me splints. I mean, it was unbelievable. Waxed, varnished, everything.
Really?
And all that stuff, incidentally, they allowed me to keep.
Mm-hmm.
And I left them, I had them at Vaux to use with the classes.
Mm-hmm.
So I taught them first aid, and I got a big kick out of it. I was also on an air raid warden. Get a ribbon. I was able to walk when I had an air raid drill. I didn't have to go in the house or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to, then I was with the community center, and I used to take my older daughter down with me, and we'd come back, and she loved it when there was an air raid, and she could stay outside with me as we were coming home or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I also was on the mobile squad. I kept stuff in the trunk of the car, had an insignia. There was a fire or anything else I could go through.
Mm-hmm.
But I did a lot. I had I gave a lot of blood during the war. In fact, I had a 34-year pint pin or something like that for giving a large amounts. And or I'd give and send it to someone in the Army. John Jenny, that letter you read, he was a colonel or something. So I used to donate my pint of blood to him. I gave blood up until I was 70. You weren't supposed to give blood after 65. but I never said anything, so I went in. When I was 70, I went in and give blood. And the nurse was all ready. She wrote me up and ready to send me to a table. And her supervisor happened to be walking by, and she said to the supervisor, "Isn't it wonderful? This man's 70 years old and he's going to give blood." I finished it. She said, "Oh, no, nobody after 65.
Oh. Tell me about your experience being the founder of Chi Epsilon Phi.
Well, that was a Jewish fraternity. Back in those days, I don't know whether I want to talk about it now, but it was difficult for the Jewish boy to get in.
Please do tell us.
Couldn't get into that fraternity.
Mm-hmm.
And so there were 6 of us, I think. 5 or 6 of us got together. I was the only junior, and the other men were seniors. And we we were going to organize this fraternity. We were certified by Temple. Had a fellow named Joe Meister and Gus Heineman, both were advisors. And we got going and we did well. We had a good fraternity, got a good membership, and we used to do a lot for the members. For an exam, for example, we'd help the men prepare for the exam. We would written test, we'd go over questions with them, and so forth. It was a big help. And we continued, and there was the other fraternity, Phi K, in I think it was 66. Phi K and our fraternity combined. And since then, and we took, of course, the name of Phi K because they're a national.
Right.
But the relationship was very good between the members. And Phi K, of course, still exists. And in those days, too, Phi K had a student fraternity at Temple. And we were my junior year, the other men's senior year, so we got organized and we went along well.
That fraternity stayed in existence then from 29 until 66.
Oh, no, it wasn't. Wait a minute. 30,
1930.
our fraternity was founded. You know, my junior year, I was in 30, was a junior. That's right, it was founded in 1930. And we continued right through the years.
You work with Special Olympics quite a bit, particularly since your retirement. Is that
Yes.
correct? Can you tell us a little bit what capacity your voluntary work has been there?
At first, I helped at their track and field meets. Then later on, later years, I became a member of the advisory board. And then we have one big track meet every year in May. A couple thousand students, a couple thousand volunteer workers, a big track and field meet. And I'm head starter. I have an assistant a starter. It helps out too. And every year I do that. Also, they have their swimming meet championships. They use Lincoln High and LaSalle College. I start those races for them. Then they have district meets to certify them for the big meet, get the standards and clerking and so forth. And I do a couple of the districts. They're all together, so I can't do each one. So I do a couple of those. I start for them. And I help in other ways I can. I received their Distinguished Service Award.
You also have some awards in there that mark some 10-year anniversaries of work at Twin Spring Farm Day Camp. Give us an idea what your progression. You've just marked the 30th year, I believe.
Oh,
with
yeah,
them,
well,
have you not?
as I said before, I came up there in '60. I didn't want to sit around during the summer. I didn't advertise that I was out or was finished down there, and had an interview with Mrs. Hood. And I liked her philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
She had a good, sound philosophy. So we came to terms, but as soon as word got out that I was free, a number of day camps called, asked me, and more money too.
Mm-hmm.
But I said, no, I'm gonna go with her.
Mm-hmm.
Well, very wise decision. Very wise decision. Wonderful person. It's good, sound philosophy. And first couple years, I had a bunk. But then after that, I became program director and with no group responsibility, and
Mm-hmm.
been doing that ever since. She gave me an award, I don't know, 10 years, 20 years, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
30 years, they named a building after me.
You have a gimmick you use up there with the youngsters involving hats. Would you
Oh.
explain that?
Yeah, I wear a different cap every day.
Mm-hmm.
And however, I wear two hats, in fact. I wear a big straw hat to keep the sun off me. And on top of that, I wear my cap. So I thought last year I started it. I told the kids, I said, if you see me wear that hat again, and the first one that sees it and tells me when, or so forth, he or she may keep the cap.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that became so popular. First year I lost 17. Last year I lost 20.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, when I'll take the group, parents come in to see the camp, so I'll take them around, and as I go around, kids will run up, I saw you with that hat, you wore that hat before, this type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they get so excited. And then I bring them up on a stage and give them the cap.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do it. I have a bunch. I get about 150 hats.
Where do you get all the hats?
Well, lately now, people have been giving them to me.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, one of the mothers sent in 6 hats with the kid.
Really?
Really. A couple of parents gave me a hat. I don't wear them,
Mm-hmm.
except for that.
Well, the other main occupation you now have in your so-called retirement years is in student-teacher supervision at
Yes.
Temple.
Oh, when I retired, well, as I said, for about 25 years, I was a cooperating teacher at Falks. They sent their tunes. In fact, Prue Fleming, I don't know whether you ever heard of her. She was at Temple. She asked me, they had an intern program that year where they needed to certify people to teach physical education who had other credits but just didn't have that.
Mm-hmm.
So she wrote a letter I didn't know about until the principal called me in and asked the principal if she could come over and videotape one of my classes.
Mm-hmm.
Principal asked, I said, oh yeah, let her come over, it's all right. So she came over and videotaped the class, and then she used it for that.
Mm-hmm.
Mike came over and videotaped a couple classes.
Mike Goldberg.
Yes, and then each year, I used to come over to Temple. Dr. Jack was head. He had asked me to come over, and I spoke to students he had teaching in the inner schools, in the city schools.
Mm-hmm.
And Mike came over. When I retired, Mike called me and asked me if I'd be interested. It was the funniest thing. Had he called me 2 minutes later, I had my suitcases packed, my hat on, ready to go out the door, and the phone rang. I was going to California for 2 weeks. And it was Mike asked me if I would be interested. I jumped at that.
Mm-hmm.
And But I said, I'm going to California. I'm ready to leave. He said, you go ahead. I'll cover for you. And when I came back, he went with me. My first assignment was at Mastbaum.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that incident where more than 8 weeks over there, bumped into a fellow named Jimmy Woodside, whose first job was with me at Vaux. He later became a head of department in physical education. And I introduced him to Mike, and he said the same thing to Mike, what he had learned and so forth at Vaux. But that was one of the best phone calls I ever received.
Mm-hmm.
Mike's a good man. He's a good teacher.
Mm-hmm.
I place him right up there with Heinemann, and that's placing him high.
Mm-hmm. One of the really significant things in terms of your relationship to Temple has to be the fact that a scholarship is now awarded in your name.
The good thing about that is that always happens after you pass away.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to see it, and I had the pleasure of watching it or seeing it and taking part in it this past April. So that's a big thing.
That you must be very proud of that.
Oh,
What
very much.
What I would like to do, with your permission, is to see some of your memorabilia, if you would, to give us a tour and maybe look closely at some of your awards and recognitions.
Well, I've been pretty fortunate. Of course, I have the building now at camp,
Mm-hmm.
and the Philadelphia Hyper D
Mm-hmm.
has a scholarship in my name, thanks to Mike. They have what is called a outstanding senior in high school,
Mm-hmm.
and that takes in high academic standards, a good lifestyle,
Mm-hmm.
a lifestyle in athletics or similar to that.
Mm-hmm.
And they had that a couple years, and then about 3 years ago, due to Mike, he instigated it, and they now call that the Nate Garfinkel Scholarship Fund.
Mm-hmm.
There we give, last year we gave $500 to a high school senior
Excellent.
for school.
Well, then, if we might, we'll
All
have
right.
a little look around.
Award here was given to me by the Philadelphia Association, Hyper D, Service Award, in 1982. That's the local
Mm-hmm.
association.
And you're still active with that group
Yes,
as well?
yes, I'm still active with it. I'm on the what do you call it, the
Executive
Board of Directors
Mhm.
or Executive Committee.
I noticed you have a couple of trophies with a black bow tie. What
Well,
is that?
I was noted for, the uniform used to be years and years ago, white shirt, black bow tie, dark trousers.
Mhm.
And little by little it disappeared. And I was the last one in the city to wear the uniform. Till the day I retired, that was my uniform. So when,
That was from Vox, I believe.
the gym department there put this together, and they put the black bow tie on it.
And the inscription says, "Never tied for first place, always a sole winner." Nate Garfinkel, 1982.
Now, 82 was when I put in, was it 40 years or 30 years? I don't know. Over here are some citations. This is an appreciation of 30 years service at Vaux Junior High. Had about 800 people turn out that night. This was the principal at Vaux. This one here was was a testimonial dinner, or dinner and testimonial affair. It was a surprise too, by the way. I didn't know it. They gave it at a catering place on Broad and Girard, and I was supposed to go there to be interviewed to run a program in a synagogue. And I walked in there, and all these people were there, about 300 people. Was surprised, and it was testimonial for it. This is a picture of the cake they had for me when they closed down the center.
And this is for your
This one was
Special Olympics?
Special Olympics Service Award I received for my participation in Special Olympics.
And
Got that in 1986.
and their inscription, "Let me win, but if I cannot win, let me be brave in the attempt."
Well, that's the motto of
Motto
Special
of the
Olympics.
Special Olympics.
Yes, that's their motto. Now, over here, up there, is a certificate of appreciation from the American Alliance, signed by Barbara Lockhart, who was professor at Temple, also athletic director at one time for the girls' athletics when they were separated.
And at that time was serving as Alliance president.
Yeah, she was Alliance president at that time. This one right under here, that's a big honor, I think. You're selected by your college, which is Hyper D, to receive the certificate of honor given by the general alumni. And got that in 78. What's this one?
That's from your athletes at
The
at
athletes
Vox.
from Volks
That was-
Junior High presented that to me at one of our graduation, I think it was. That was when? June 1975.
And the Chi Epsilon Phi.
This is the Chi Epsilon Pi. Oh, God.
59.
1959. That was the Chi Epsilon Pi of Physical Education Fraternity. And I was a founder, one of the founders of that one.
This, to me, Nate, is one of your most distinguished
Yes,
awards.
this is very important. The William Stecker Award. William Stecker was a former director, in fact, the first director of physical education in Philadelphia. And when he passed away, the board set up this award. And the way you're selected for that, people nominate you. And then the superintendent of schools, the director of physical education, and the president of the Philadelphia Hyper D then pick one. And this has got to be one of my top awards. It was a real wonderful affair. And you don't know until the dinner that we have each year. And
Who the winners are. You have several. I noticed there's a couple more citations from Fox Junior High School. You have letters of commendation from School District of Philadelphia.
right, I got those.
And
This one here.
You've been an active member of the Schoolman's Club as well, is that right?
Yes, the Schoolman's Club, I'm active and I'm on their executive board. I got a citation from them. Schoolman's Club up here. This one over here. The lamp of knowledge burns brighter. You lit the flame for so many children.
And that's
That
from-
1988,
From Vox High.
Volks Junior High, yes. What's over here?
That's a 1972
That's also
award that's your Hall of Fame induction
Yeah.
at Vaux.
Yeah, that was inducted into the Hall of Fame at Vaux,
Hmm
1972.
And just to the right of that one is one that reflects your involvement
With basketball.
with basketball officiating.
Yeah, that was a 20-year award.
Hmm
This is one from the camp. As director, in recognition of distinguished and devoted service as director of Twin Spring Farm. That was in '82. This one is the Professional Honor Award by the Pennsylvania State of Hyper D. Professional Honor Award.
So you have recognition there from the Philadelphia Association, the State Association, right up through the National.
Right. Then this is a citation award, State Senate at Harrisburg, for participation in the senior games held at Montgomery College.
And those are your
Over here,
trophies for those.
trophies that I won. What I do? Darts, and I was never in a tap room. Basketball and baseball throw. Then the following year, that was '88, '89, I won darts again, basketball again, and ping pong. Did we talk about the one up here?
I don't believe so.
Up there is a one building dedicated. Can you see the writing on that in your picture?
Yep.
That's for 30 years service there. They named a building after me, and the good thing again is you're able to see it.
Hmm
This is an appreciation for personal commitment to the Jesse Owens games.
Nate, this is a especially beautiful award.
Yeah.
Perhaps you'd like to.
This is probably the top because this, I'm told, is the highest they give, and that's one person out of all the alumni, 162,000 people, I'm told.
That's an elite of the elite group for sure.
Yeah. That was a big honor last year.
I understand you also have had some acknowledgement by a president, a letter of commendation.
Oh, yes. That's out there.
Hmm Perhaps we could
Take a picture of that one.
have a look at that.
Ronald Reagan, who was president, congratulating me for the general love and friendship I've given to so many people. And he stated, a little love goes a long way, and yours has obviously been much more than a little. And Nancy joins him in wishing me happiness for the future. Got that in December of '88.
Nate, I'm interested, being a veteran coach of women's teams. I'm particularly interested that you've got the Temple University Women's Athletic Booster Award.
Yeah, well, I followed the women's athletics quite a bit. Visited a lot of the games,
Hmm
traveled with them a couple times at different places.
I understand you did a West Coast tour with the women's
Yes,
basketball team.
about 3-4 years ago, I was given a trip with the women's basketball team. They had a tournament out in San Diego.
Mhm.
It was an 8-day trip. Wonderful experience.
You have a significant collection of memorabilia that reflects all your accomplishment of a lifetime. I'm sure
Yeah,
you're very proud of it all. There are a couple other things I'd like to ask you about, if we could go back over and
All right.
have a seat a moment. couple of questions, and anything else you want to add that pops into your head, just let her rip. Let's see, we're all set. I'd like to finish our interview by just maybe getting you to answer a couple of daydreamy kind of questions.
Daydreaming.
Daydreaming. Dreaming for the future.
Oh,
If you had all the physical educators that are about to go out there into the workforce right now, and you had the power to give them one or two skills that you think would be vital, that would help them to succeed, to help them begin a career that might be marked by success.
well, I think a knowledge of the fundamentals of teaching are so important. I think understand the children. Now, I always suggest to my student teachers that they go into the office at the school where they're teaching and look into the records of the children. Here you have a class and there's a little boy in the back room there talking, not paying attention. You wonder why. Maybe he can't hear you. Maybe he has a hearing problem. Now, if you looked up his record and saw that, when you set up the seating arrangement, you'd put him up front. Or you may have a kid that one thing you must never do, don't embarrass children. I think that's important. Leading in from that, I never used to pick out a child to read. I would ask who wants to read. And then I would pick. The reason for that is you may pick someone and he can't read. Now, if you looked into his history record at school, you would see that. So you would be more aware of that situation. You wouldn't embarrass the child in front of his peers. Also, there you have two kids, they're close together, they're talking to one another. And if you went back into his history pocket at school, you might find some remarks in there that indicated that these two are always sitting together, talking and gabbing. So when you set up your seating chart, you put them on the other side of the room. So you do away with that. Pocket. And his whole history's in there. And if you look through those things, it's a big help to you in teaching your class. I'd love to see student teachers, or when they become teachers, be understanding of the children. Don't jump to conclusions. A boy or girl comes in late for your class. Don't jump on him. Why were you late? If he has, all right, I'll talk to you at the end of the period, that type of thing. But you don't jump all over the child. Be understanding, sympathetic. Let the kids know, as I said before, you meet them halfway and go a little more. And I think you'll gain a lot by that. You get their confidence, and you'll find they'll come around to your way of thinking.
Can you pick out one fondest memory from all your years and all your work? Or is that just impossible?
A lot of teaching those classes for Heinemann was a big one. Dr. Goldberger calling me on the phone for student teaching is certainly a big one. My coming to Twin Spring Farm and my interview there and my work at Twin Spring Farm is certainly a big one.
What has your work done for you?
What?
What has your work done for you since 1976?
Well-
Because you're giving in the so far beyond what's the normal scope.
Well, it's for me. It's something that keeps me active. It keeps me in touch. And sometimes I get the feeling that maybe I'm wanted a bit somewhere.
hmm I think more than a bit. I think a great deal. One last question. Is there any part of all that when you look over your shoulder back to your professional start, is there any part of it you would change? If you had the power to?
I don't know. I really can't answer that. I don't think what I'd change. I've been very happy down through the years with everything I've done.
That was the answer I kind of thought I would get. Because as I view your accomplishments, I would think that you derive a great deal of satisfaction.
Oh, yes, very much so.
And it
Well,
has to do with all of those lives you have touched, and are still in touch with every day.
I know when I walk through Temple and a youngster, hello, Uncle Nate. Good feeling. Or in fact, when I bump into the custodian or the maintenance people, a lot of them that I taught, or security people I taught at Vaux, or others that I've taught at Vaux, and hello, Mr. Garfinkel, how are you? So forth.
Well, I'm sure that you don't go very far any place in your day without bumping into somebody that you've had very direct teaching or coaching or volunteer work of some kind. Great
I've
deal.
been lucky. I think it's
Great.
what kept me going.
Well, Nate, I certainly appreciate your sharing your time and sharing your experiences and being on the hot seat a little bit for us.
It was fine.
I have enjoyed getting to know you a little better, and I'm very glad I had the occasion to come into your home and share some of those moments
That
with
was
you.
my pleasure.
Thank you.
And for that, you have to take a couple extra donuts.